Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
We're joined on the Starline by a 3-time Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist, former deputy sheriff, co-host, and executive producer of the Webby Award-winning true crime podcast, Anatomy of Murder. The creator of True Conviction and On the Case with Paula Zahn on Discovery ID. We welcome Scott Weinberger.
Wow, Sean, that was quite the introduction. I really appreciate that. I need to record that myself. That's really, really well done.
Scott, let's go beyond the mic. How do you go from having a camera crew following you on Fox's Cops to your latest project, the podcast that you spent 19 months embedded with the Miramar Police Department, reopening a 37-year-old cold case for cold-blooded, the Apollo Gym murders?
You know, I always felt when I was in law enforcement working in there that there was interesting stories still to be told. And once cops were following me and I realized that there's a way to take the message beyond the police car, beyond the community I was serving, I felt like there was a stronger message to be told in some of these crazy and really important cases. And so I ventured out from there, from law enforcement, crossed the crime scene tape, so to speak. Sean, I know you know what that means, going in from behind the crime scene tape to covering cases and being a reporter, starting in Florida, and then eventually making my way back to New York, where I grew up, and spent nearly 18 or 20 years for the NBC and CBS affiliates in New York.
Now, you've been an investigative reporter. You've been a cop. You've lived both sides. How did the corruption in this case shock even you?
Wow. I mean, to see that the person in the center of this investigation from day one, which is 37 years ago, is a former member of law enforcement in Florida. And what he was first accused of and then convicted of in a separate triple homicide was unbelievable to me. But then to unravel all of the other unsolved cases surrounding those convictions was amazing to me, to see that people were afraid to come forward 37 years ago because he and his partner still had a lot of tentacles outside of the police force and was a dangerous individual, and people were afraid to come forward. When we knocked on those doors 37 years later, they kind of walked out of their house and said, now I'm ready to talk about it. And that has led to an incredible journey.
As the story continues to be revealed, which episode will be the one that turns everything on its ear?
I think when we finally get an opportunity to sit down with him in prison and to be able to confirm some things and to be able to learn more people that may have been involved that were never spoken to. And then all of a sudden it opened up a real web of deceit that we were able to travel down, people that were in witness protection because of the case originally, who people thought would never be involved again in crime, may actually rear their heads in this.
Scott Weinberger from Cold Blooded, the Apollo Gym Murders, joins us beyond the mic. And Scott, it's time for the Rocky and 8. It's 8 random questions. Answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. There is absolutely no pressure.
Gotcha. Domestic
violence cases are one thing you are very passionate about.
Yes.
Which case haunts you to this very day?
Well, the one case that I've always focused in on is a pregnant mother who was really trying to give her significant other a second, third, and fourth chance. And unfortunately, in that case, the husband came back, committed murder, and also killed his unborn child. And to be able to come back and see all the warning signs that were there early on in the investigation, all of the reports of potential violence, all of the signs that were missed more than a year before she was murdered and her unborn child was murdered, made me feel like not only did the previous investigation may have let her down, but I think society as a whole not recognizing what an epidemic domestic violence really is.
You've traveled around the world. Where's your favorite spot to vacation?
I love Italy. And I love Italy, not just because of the food, not because of the people, because I love both things, but I love the history and being able to be in places where other people have walked centuries ago and life was a bit different.
Best memory at St. John's?
Watching the Johnnies play. Lou Carnesecca was the coach at the time. He wore a sweater that he never took off. until he started losing a bunch of games. And I guess he was feeling like maybe the sweater needed to go for a short period of time. So we were all there to see what else he was going to wear besides that sweater.
You've talked with the son of Sam, broke stories about lax nuclear power plant security. But what was the title, just the title, of the story that still touches you today?
Red Light Rabbi.
Favorite place to think?
That's a really good question. On a walk.
One podcast that isn't yours that you listen to?
Ooh. Oh, man, no pressure, right? Letters from Sing Sing, stories of prisoners who may have been wrongfully convicted.
Who is the best canine dog ever?
Czar.
Good boy.
That was my boy.
What's the one thing that if you ever lost would devastate you?
A lifelong friend.
Let's sneak in two more. With everything you have seen in law enforcement and in media, what does the word justice mean to you now?
It's a journey, and the one word I could say is finality.
Scott, how has reopening the cold case on the Apollo gym murders changed you, or has it lit a fire under you again?
I think it's done both, actually, Sean. I think it relit a fire for me starting this 2 years ago. I mean, I'm embedded with an agency from day one, and I've spent the longest amount of time I've ever worked on a case was this case. And it's given me a perspective of watching it from the outside and on the inside and seeing the way one detective has been so incredibly relentless in finding justice for Billy Halpern has inspired me to know that there's other people like him in other agencies still today, even though law enforcement has changed. These people still exist.
It's time for one big question with Scott Weinberger. He is the host of Cold Blooded, the Apollo Gym Murders, joins us beyond the mic. Why has technology helped cold cases, and has it brought justice to cases 40 years later?
Well, first of all, technology is a game changer in so many different ways. Obviously, forensics, DNA, familial DNA, genealogy, all the things that are now used to track and trace people that never would have been possible before. Evidence that was collected 40 years ago sat in an evidence locker that has never been tested before. Like in my case, where we have evidence that sat there for 37 years, and now all of a sudden we're getting results from a piece of evidence that was collected 37 years ago. And I think what is really changing is, yes, these do make a difference in families that never expected even anyone to mention their victim's name, family member's name again. All of a sudden, people are knocking on the doors and saying, I think you thought we forgot, but we haven't. And science has caught up, and now we're catching up to science.
He remembers Lou Carnesecca's sweater, loved his canine czar, and wants you to hear Cold Blooded, the Apollo Gym Murders. Scott Weinberger, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you, Sean. Great to be with you.
And that, my friends, is a Beyond the Mic shortcut. If you're enjoying these conversations, please check out another Beyond the Mic episode to find more actors, artists, and people you need to know. We'd also appreciate a like and subscribe on the Good Pods app.